In the vast expanse of the Galactic Federation, humanity had long been viewed as an oddity, a young upstart species that had emerged from their isolated homeworld with grand ideas of unity and cooperation. While other races boasted of their might through centuries of bloody conquest and territorial expansion, the humans seemed content to occupy a different space, one centered around diplomatic negotiations, cultural exchanges, and technological innovations. To the elder races that dominated the interstellar political landscape, the humans were an intriguing but ultimately inconsequential presence. Ambassador Zoraeum of the Tatkari, a species renowned for their warlike tendencies and obsession with strength, was particularly dismissive of humanity's role in the Federation. "Humans are nothing more than idealistic dreamers," she would sneer during council meetings. "They have forgotten the necessity of force. Their history may be full of conflict, but they are far removed from it now." The consensus among the galaxy's most influential factions was that the humans, while useful for trade agreements and neutral diplomacy, were simply too soft, too polite, and too focused on peaceful endeavors to be taken seriously as a true power. The Tatkari, the Ragnos, and the brutal Viserion, these were the races that wielded the real might, the ones who handled the burdens of security and warfare. "Humans aren't built for battle," Yudan, a high-ranking Vectarian general, had once declared. "Their society has grown too comfortable. They are incapable of the necessary violence that sustains dominance in this galaxy." Behind closed doors, the discussions about humanity were more candid, if not entirely dismissive. The humans were tolerated, sometimes even admired for their resourcefulness and technological contributions, but they were never feared. The galaxy had come to accept that the humans were simply different, preferring the path of diplomacy and innovation over that of conquest and bloodshed. For most, this was acceptable. The humans were useful, and that was all that truly mattered. Yet, there were a few voices within the Federation, whispers really, who had taken a deeper dive into humanity's history. The more scholarly members had uncovered the humans' long, violent past, a chronicle of tribal conflicts, world wars, and brutalities that rivaled even the most hardened of galactic civilizations. But now the humans were different, changed. They had seemingly moved beyond their martial roots, embracing a path of peace and cooperation. Whatever they were in the past, they've grown soft, Zoraeum had once declared, her words dripping with disdain. They think themselves above war now, and that makes them weak. But even as she spoke those words, there were those who quietly wondered if the reality was not quite so simple. Humanity had abstained from any significant galactic conflicts for centuries, steering clear of war and territorial disputes. Some speculated that it was due to fear of defeat, while others believed it was because they had grown too complacent to engage in such matters. Yet, a few cautious voices suggested a different theory. Perhaps the humans were not afraid of war itself, but rather of what they might become if they were to unleash the full extent of their martial capabilities once more. What these skeptics did not realize, however, was that the humans had indeed been biding their time, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal their true nature to the galaxy. And that moment was about to arrive, in the form of a brutal attack on one of their isolated colonies. Far from the hushed whispers and dismissive attitudes that permeated the Galactic Federation's council chambers, a dark new threat was brewing in the farthest reaches of known space. The Zoyan Dominion, a race of vicious conquerors, driven by an insatiable hunger for expansion, had been steadily growing bolder in their ambitions. For years, the Zoyans had tested the Federation's defenses, launching a series of calculated strikes against the more isolated and vulnerable colonies of the galaxy's lesser species. Yet, the Galactic Council had remained stubbornly reluctant to mount a decisive counteroffensive, as if they were waiting for the Zoyans to overreach and target a more significant prize before they would consider a more forceful response. And then the Zoyans found that prize, a human colony on the very edge of Federation space. It was not the largest or most strategically important outpost, but it was isolated and ill-equipped to withstand the onslaught that was about to descend upon it. When the Zoyan Armada struck, They did not simply launch a calculated military operation, they unleashed a brutal and unrelenting massacre. Entire settlements were razed to the ground, with men, women, and children alike slaughtered without a shred of mercy. The Zoyans left nothing standing, sending a clear and chilling message to the rest of the galaxy: you are weak, and we are the hunters. The gruesome footage of the colony's destruction spread like wildfire, reaching the Galactic Council within hours. And with it came the realization that this was no mere raid. This was an outright declaration of war. The Council convened in a state of emergency, debating potential courses of action, but for the humans, there was no need for such deliberation. Within moments of receiving the news, Earth's response was immediate and absolute. "We will handle this ourselves," the human ambassador declared, his voice devoid of the usual warmth and politeness that had come to typify humanity's diplomatic course. There were no requests for assistance, no pleas for support, just a simple, resolute statement that sent shockwaves through the gathered alien delegates. The other council members were stunned. The humans had never reacted in such a manner before, always eager to work alongside the Federation in resolving disputes through diplomatic channels. But now their diplomats had fallen silent, their leaders no longer engaging in the familiar debates and negotiations. As Earth began to mobilize its forces, the human fleets, once seen as modest and inconsequential, suddenly emerged in overwhelming numbers. Massive warships, unlike anything the Galactic Federation had ever encountered, swiftly moved into strategic positions, accompanied by entire battalions of soldiers preparing for deployment. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity shifted from its familiar role of peaceful collaboration to one of cold, calculated war preparation. And with this revelation came a dawning realization that would send shivers down the spines of the elder races. The humans had never been weak. They had never been incapable of violence. They had simply chosen not to unleash it. But now they had been provoked, and when humanity was roused from its slumber, something ancient and terrifying awakened within them. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered the warnings of the scholars, the cautious voices that had tried to caution against underestimating the true nature of the peaceful humans. Humanity was not soft, nor were they weak. They were a species forged in the crucible of war, tempered by millennia of conflict, and trained by the harsh realities of their own bloody history. They had chosen peace, but peace was not their nature. And the Galactic Council, once so dismissive of humanity's military capabilities, now watched in growing dread as the humans prepared for war, realizing with a sinking sense of trepidation that the Zoyans had made a grave and irreversible mistake. As the Zoyan armada descended upon the isolated human colony, they did so with a brutal efficiency that left little doubt as to their intentions. The orbital bombardment came first, raining down devastation from above with surgical precision, leaving smoking craters where bustling settlements had once stood. Then, the ground forces swept in, wave after wave of heavily armed Zoyan warriors, their towering reptilian forms exuding an aura of merciless conquest. It was not a battle, but rather a one-sided slaughter. The human defenders, equipped with little more than basic militia-grade weapons, were no match for the elite Zoyan soldiers who moved with a calculated ruthlessness that belied their reptilian nature. The local populace, caught in the crossfire, stood no chance against the onslaught, their desperate cries for help lost amidst the thunderous onslaught. In mere hours, the once thriving colony had been reduced to ashes, its people gone, their screams forever silenced by the Zoyans' relentless assault. Standing amidst the ruins, the Zoyan commander, General Krax, surveyed the devastation with a satisfied, almost gleeful expression. The mission had been a resounding success. Another human settlement wiped from the face of the galaxy, another message delivered to the Galactic Federation. "Transmit the footage," Krax ordered, his voice cold and guttural. His command was swiftly obeyed, and the scenes of carnage were broadcast throughout the known worlds, a testament to the Zoyan Dominion's power and a warning to any who dared to defy them. It was a message, not just to the Federation, but to humanity itself: you are weak, you are prey, and we are the hunters. For the Zoyans, this was how they solidified their dominance, through relentless conquest, ruthless destruction, and the installation of pure, unadulterated fear. They believed that, like so many other species before them, humanity would crumble under the weight of this overwhelming display of force, their idealistic notions of peace and cooperation shattered by the brutal reality of the Zoyan onslaught. But what Krax and his ilk failed to comprehend was the true nature of the humans, a nature that had been long buried, yet never truly extinguished. As the footage of the colony's decimation spread across the galaxy, reaching not just the Galactic Council, but the very heart of humanity itself, a profound transformation began to take place. Anger, simmering just beneath the surface, began to rise, coalescing into a cold, focused resolve that would shake the foundations of the known universe. In command centers deep beneath the surface of Earth, military leaders convened, their expressions hardened by a lifetime of strategic planning and battlefield experience. There was no need for lengthy debate or diplomatic niceties. The time for such things had long since passed. The Zoyans had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and now there was only one course of action. "We've kept our true strength hidden for far too long," General Harris announced, his voice steady and unwavering as he addressed the gathered commanders. "The Federation thinks they know us, but they don't. The Zoyans think they can strike at us without consequence. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Around the room, silent nods of agreement followed, for the humans had been underestimated for far too long. The Zoyans had assumed that humanity's restraint was a sign of weakness, that their contributions to the Galactic Federation, the diplomacy, the scientific advancements, the cultural exchanges, were the sum total of their capabilities. They had never seen the other side of humanity, the side that had fought its way through millennia of wars, the side that had survived conflicts so brutal they had reshaped the very fabric of human society. "Activate the fleets," Paris commanded, his voice resolute. For centuries, Earth had maintained a closely guarded secret. Its true military might had never been fully revealed, not even to the Federation. The warships that patrolled the galaxy, the soldiers that participated in joint peacekeeping operations, those were but a fraction of humanity's true power. Earth had long ago prepared for the possibility of galactic conflict, even if the rest of the galaxy remained blissfully unaware. And now the real fleets, the ones hidden in deep space stations and secret orbital shipyards, were about to be unleashed, ready to deliver a reckoning that the Zoyans could scarcely have imagined. As the massive human warships began to mobilize, emerging from the depths of space like wrathful behemoths, the Zoyans, still reveling in their recent victory over the isolated colony, had no idea of the storm that was about to descend upon them. These were not the lightly armed cruisers the Galactic Federation had grown accustomed to seeing from humanity. These were vessels of pure, unadulterated war, bristling with advanced weaponry and armor that could withstand even the most punishing bombardments. Their engines, far surpassing the capabilities of anything the Zoyans had in their own arsenal, propelled them through the vastness of space with a speed that bordered on the surreal. It was clear that the humans had spent centuries perfecting their military technology, ensuring that when the time came, they would be ready to unleash the full extent of their might upon any who dared to threaten them. The Zoyan forces, spread thin across their ever-expanding territories, were completely unprepared for the onslaught that was about to befall them. Their arrogance, born of countless victories over lesser species, had blinded them to the possibility that the peaceful humans would retaliate with anything more than empty words and diplomatic posturing. But as they reveled in their conquest, the human fleets jumped into hyperspace, moving with a swiftness that defied the very laws of physics, converging upon Zoyan-held worlds with a single-minded purpose: retribution. At the helm of one of the massive command ships, Admiral Sophia Ryder stood before a tactical display, her expression one of resolute determination. Gone was the warmth and diplomacy that had so often characterized humanity's interactions with the Galactic Federation. In its place burned a fire that spoke of a people long underestimated, now poised to unleash the full fury of their dormant might. The Zoyans wanted a war, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet laced with an unmistakable edge. Then that is exactly what they shall receive. Without warning, the human fleets emerged from hyperspace, their ships materializing directly above a heavily fortified Zoyan world, one of the core strongholds of the Dominion. There were no diplomatic overtures, no ultimatums issued. The humans had made their decision, and they were prepared to see it through, consequences be damned. As soon as the fleets were in position, they opened fire, unleashing a devastatingly coordinated barrage of kinetic and energy-based weapons that punched through the Zoyan defenses with terrifying efficiency. The planet's shields, once thought impregnable, crumbled under the onslaught, and within mere minutes, entire cities were reduced to smoldering ruins. The Zoyan forces, so accustomed to being the aggressors, found themselves scrambling to mount a coherent defense, but their efforts proved woefully inadequate. Their troops, spread thin across their far-flung territories, could not mobilize quickly enough to counter the human onslaught, and on the ground, Zoyan generals barked orders in vain, their soldiers desperately trying to stem the tide of the relentless human assault. The Galactic Federation, once so dismissive of humanity's martial capabilities, watched in stunned silence as the tide of the conflict began to turn. The humans, long regarded as little more than diplomatic and scientific allies, were now revealing the full extent of their military might. A might that had been hidden from the galaxy for centuries, lulling their adversaries into a false sense of security. As the human fleets pressed deeper into Zoyan-controlled space, systematically dismantling their defensive strongholds, the Galactic Council found themselves forced to reckon with a sobering realization. They had badly underestimated the true nature of their human allies. The time for dismissing them as mere diplomats and scientists had passed. The galaxy was now confronted with the full force of a people whose martial prowess had been forged in the crucible of their own bloody history, a history that had been purposefully obscured from the elder races. The Zoyans, once confident in their ability to crush the weak humans, now faced the daunting prospect of a foe whose fury had been dormant for far too long. And as the human onslaught continued to ripple through their territories, the Dominion found itself facing a new and terrifying reality. The sleeping giants had awoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The conflict between humanity and the Zoyan Dominion raged on, with both sides employing increasingly sophisticated strategies and technologies in a desperate bid for victory. The human fleets, led by the brilliant and uncompromising Admiral Sophia Ryder, pressed their advantage relentlessly, striking deep into Zoyan-held territories and systematically dismantling their defensive strongholds. Yet, the Zoyans were not to be underestimated. Driven by their insatiable hunger for conquest, they adapted quickly, evolving their tactics to counter the humans' superior firepower and mobility. Fierce ground battles erupted on contested worlds, as the Zoyan forces, their reptilian forms towering over their human adversaries, fought with a tenacity that surprised even the hardened human soldiers. In the command centers of both sides, the personal journeys of key characters began to unfold, adding a new layer of complexity to the unfolding conflict. On the human side, Sophia Ryder stood as a towering figure, a seasoned military commander with a reputation for ruthlessness that was matched only by her brilliance in strategy and tactics. As the war raged on, she found herself grappling with the immense weight of her decisions, the vast cost of the conflict, and the growing realization that the sleeping giants of humanity had been awakened from their long slumber. Opposing her was Kara, a Zoyan general whose own convictions had been shaken by the human onslaught. Raised in a culture that espoused the absolute superiority of her species, Sarah found herself grudgingly admiring the ingenuity and resilience of her human foes, even as she led her troops into the crucible of battle. As the conflict intensified, both sides faced new challenges and setbacks. The humans, for all their technological might, were forced to adapt and evolve their strategies to counter the Zoyans' increasingly sophisticated countermeasures. The Zoyans, meanwhile, were confronted with the realization that the peaceful humans they had once dismissed were now a formidable adversary, one that would not be easily broken. In the shadows, the Galactic Federation watched the unfolding events with a mix of trepidation and fascination. The elder races, once so quick to dismiss humanity, now found themselves seeking the aid of their long underestimated allies, forging unexpected alliances as the threat of the Zoyan dominion loomed ever larger. The war had become a true test of wills, a clash of civilizations that would reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. And at the heart of it all were the humans, a people who had long been underestimated, but who now stood poised to leave an indelible mark on the history of their kind. As the conflict raged on, both Ryder and Sarah were forced to confront the complexities of their respective roles. Ryder, driven by an unwavering sense of duty and a desire to protect her people, grappled with the moral weight of her decisions, the immense cost of the war, and the unsettling realization that the peaceful humans of old had been a carefully crafted facade, a veneer that had now been shattered, revealing the true nature of their species. Sarah, on the other hand, found herself in the midst of a profound internal struggle. Her lifelong beliefs in the superiority of the Zoyan race had been shaken to the core by the humans' unwavering resilience and strategic brilliance. She began to question the very foundations of her people's conquering ideology, torn between the demands of her superiors and a growing respect for the lesser species that had so firmly resisted their advance. The war had become a crucible, forging new alliances and shattering old certainties. The Galactic Federation, once so dismissive of humanity's capabilities, now found themselves in a precarious position, forced to reckon with the true extent of the humans' martial prowess and the potential consequences of underestimating them for so long. As the conflict raged on, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which side would emerge victorious from the maelstrom of this epic confrontation. For the humans, it was a chance to reclaim their rightful place in the galactic order, to shed the shackles of their perceived weakness and assert their true power. And for the Zoyans, it was a desperate struggle to maintain their dominance, lest they be consumed by the rekindled flames of humanity's long-dormant fury. The conflict between humanity and the Zoyan dominion had reached a fever pitch. The two sides locked in a desperate struggle that threatened to reshape the very foundations of the Galactic Federation. The humans, once dismissed as soft and weak, had emerged from the shadows, revealing the full extent of their long-dormant martial capabilities, while the Zoyans, once confident in their ability to crush their inferior foes, found themselves confronted with a fury they could scarcely have imagined. At the heart of the humans' resurgence was Admiral Sophia Ryder, a brilliant and uncompromising military strategist whose tactical brilliance had turned the tide of the war. Under her command, the human fleets had carved a path of destruction through Zoyan-held territories, systematically dismantling their defensive fortifications and supply lines with a relentless precision that left their adversaries reeling. Yet, the Zoyans were far from defeated. Driven by their insatiable desire for conquest, they had adapted their strategies, evolving their tactics to counter the humans' overwhelming firepower and mobility. Fierce ground battles erupted on contested worlds as the Zoyan forces, their reptilian forms towering over their human counterparts, fought with a tenacity that defied the predictions of even the most seasoned military analysts. As the conflict raged on, the personal journeys of key figures on both sides began to intertwine, adding a new layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. Ryder, haunted by the immense cost of the war and the unsettling realization that the peaceful humans of old had been little more than a carefully crafted facade, found herself grappling with the moral weight of her decisions, torn between her duty to protect her people and the growing doubts that threatened to consume her. Opposing her was Kara, a Zoyan general whose own convictions had been shaken to the core by the human onslaught. Raised in a culture that espoused the absolute supremacy of her species, Sarah had found herself grudgingly admiring the ingenuity and resilience of her human foes, even as she led her troops into the crucible of battle. As the conflict intensified, her internal struggle deepened, as she was forced to confront the possibility that the foundations of her people's conquering ideology were built upon the shifting sands of falsehood and delusion. In the shadows of the war, the Galactic Federation watched with a mix of trepidation and fascination, the elder races who had once so readily dismissed humanity, now seeking their aid as the threat of the Zoyan dominion loomed ever larger. The unexpected alliances that had formed, forged in the heat of desperate necessity, served as a stark reminder of the perilous consequences of underestimating the true nature of the peaceful humans. The conflict had become a true test of wills, a clash of civilizations that would reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. And at the heart of it all were the humans, a people who had long been underestimated, but who now stood poised to leave an indelible mark on the history of their kind. As the war reached its climactic conclusion, the human fleets, led by the indomitable Sophia Ryder, delivered a decisive blow against the Zoyan dominion, shattering their defensive lines and cutting off their supply routes. The Zoyan forces, once so confident in their ability to crush their adversaries, found themselves in disarray, their commanders desperately scrambling to mount a cohesive counteroffensive. In the end, it was the sheer tenacity and resilience of the human forces, combined with their tactical brilliance and technological superiority, that turned the tide of the conflict. The Zoyan dominion, their vaunted military might brought low by the fury of the Forgotten Ones, were forced to concede defeat, their dreams of galactic conquest reduced to ashes. As the dust settled, the Galactic Federation, once so dismissive of humanity's capabilities, now looked upon them with a newfound respect and admiration. The peaceful humans, it seemed, had never truly been weak. They had simply chosen to withhold the full extent of their martial prowess, content to play the role of diplomatic and scientific partners rather than that of warrior conquerors. But now the galaxy had witnessed the true nature of humanity, a people forged in the crucible of their own bloody history, their dormant fury unleashed with devastating effect. And in the aftermath of the conflict, the elder races found themselves facing a new reality, one in which the sleeping giants had awoken, their presence forever altering the delicate balance of power that had once defined the Galactic Federation. The epilogue to this epic tale would be one of enduring impact, as humanity's resurgence opened new frontiers of cooperation and exploration in the galaxy, their once hidden potential now fully realized. The galaxy, humbled by the power of the Forgotten Ones, would never again underestimate the true strength that lay dormant within the human spirit, a strength that, when awakened, could shake the very foundations of the known universe.